What's up guys, James from SIKKY Manufacturing. As you can see, this FRS behind me has dual calipers on it, which obviously isn't factory. Today I'm going to show you a step-by-step guide on how you can take the SIKKY billet adapter bracket and a wheel wood caliper and add dual calipers to the back of your FRS or BRZ. The huge advantage of this SIKKY kit is it allows you to retain the factory emergency brake, which is awesome for you guys that like to dabble on the track a little bit but also run on the street. If you want to totally delete it, you're on track only kind of setup, the kit comes with everything you need to completely delete the dust shield and all the factory emergency brakes, saving maximum weight. So either way, we got you covered with whatever way you want to go on your FRS or BRZ to add that second set of calipers. Let's get into the install. So as with anything, there's a couple ways to take this stuff apart, but what I'm going to show you is based on my experience with our particular car here. In our case, the wheel bearing assembly, which you're going to need to remove to get this bracket mounted behind it, was seized in really bad on the driver's side when we did it. So in our case, we got to completely remove the spindle. So I'm going to show you that method. But I would suggest, depending on where your car's from, you might want to attempt removing the wheel bearing assembly without taking off the spindle. But like I said, I'm going to show you the more difficult version of the installation in case you have a stubborn wheel bearing assembly just like we did. The very first step, we're going to get this axle nut off, as eventually, since we're pulling the whole spindle, we're going to need to remove the axle from the back side of this. We don't need to mess with the rear end side though. All right, so next step, we're going to take off the factory caliper, two 14mm bolts holding on. All right, so you want to get this off to the side. Just want to avoid it hanging from the brake line itself. It's not the end of the world if you gently put it down there, but several methods to do it. You know, I like to try to stick it somewhere out of the way and just kind of move around with versus unhooking the brake line and having to deal with re-bleeding your brakes, because that's obviously an extra step and a lot of extra work that isn't really needed. So again, you can to each his own on that one, but that's the way I prefer to do it. All right, so now we can remove the rotor. All right, so next step, obviously there's the spindle's held on by 4 control arms. You got the one up front here, actually has a little cotter pin in it. You're gonna take that one off, the upper control arm, this rear lower control arm, and then the control arm right under here. So once you get those 4 off, you're gonna basically slide the spindle out. The axle might need a little bit of tapping, but it should all come apart. And then you have the whole spindle assembly. I would remove the shoes ahead of time, just makes it a little easier. You're going to twist these 2 pins here and the clips come off. Shoes come off, just keep track of all your springs. Everything on the emergency brake system is going to go back together as it was if you're utilizing the factory emergency brake like we're going to be on this installation. So I'm going to fast forward to that step where the spindle is removed, and we're going to be showing you the modifications of the dust shield and putting it back together with the SIKKY bracketry. So that'll streamline this install video and make sure it's not too long. All right, so here you can see we got the spindle out, wheel bearing assembly. It's held in by these 4 14mm bolts that you got to access from the back side here. So normally on a car that wasn't as rusty as this one, you could take these out on the car, knock this thing out from the back and be done with it. But in our case, it does not come out that easy. So I'm going to take this to a hydraulic press at the other end of the shop, and we're going to circle back when that's done. So I'm not going to show that part, but you got to press the wheel bearing out. So it's pretty basic operation there. If you ever replace the wheel bearing, it's the same kind of thing. So in our case, we got a whole new wheel bearing assembly. They're really cheap for the Scion FRS, for the FRS BRZ. Not that this car had a ton of mileage on it, but to go through all that work and potentially damage this bearing, and as bad as this thing looks, we're just going to start off with new wheel bearings in the back. Plus we're going to be putting quite a lot of power through this car, so figured it can't hurt. It'll make our reinstallation much easier too, so we'll be able to press this new one right back in. All right, so here you can see this is what it looks like broken down. Quick update to another technique you can use is an air chisel, air hammer. That's what I actually did because it's kind of awkward trying to mount this thing in a press the way the heat shield wraps around. So In our case, since we're putting a new bearing in, I didn't have to worry about beating this thing up. It literally took 30 seconds with an air hammer, just worked my way around, and you can see how filthy this thing and caked it is. I mean, it was literally like welded to this spindle. So after getting it out, I went and cleaned this up, sanded all the rough spots down. Didn't want to take too much off. You obviously want it to still be a bit of a press fit with the new one. Doesn't have to be super tight, but as long as it goes in there and kind of aligns on the way in, then you're good. The last half of this bearing is a little bit taller, so this part here is what actually like presses and centers out. The beginning here is really just kind of like a taper. But anyway, so we're gonna be reusing this piece entirely. This is now scrap. Next part is we have to disassemble this dust shield. So this is where our emergency brake cable is going to go in, and again, this system is all based around being able to reuse the emergency brake. You can actually use this kit and not use the emergency brake. All you'd really have to do is you could just hack all this stuff off if you didn't want it. This shield here, part of it would still need to be incorporated due to the thickness here and the spacing to get everything set right, but this kit's designed to work with your emergency brake. You can totally use it without. It's up to you. If you race car guys that don't want that extra weight, sure, why not? But either way, this is held together with 4 rivets. So you got these 2 smaller rivets here and these 2 bigger rivets that hold on the spring mounts for the brake shoes. So we're gonna reuse this factory piece here. So first step we're gonna do to get this split apart is we're gonna drill these rivets out. So you just get to the center of each one of these rivets, get a large enough drill bit. By the time you get through this part of the rivet here, it cuts through, and then you just knock the rivet out. But I'll show you a couple of them just to show you how easy it is. But that's the next step, and then we can move on to the modifications we have to do to the outer ring. All right, so we're going to start with these smaller of the 2 rivets. Just get in the center of it. Move on to the next one. All right, now we're going to move over to these larger ones. You can see how that when you get through, it literally just breaks loose. All right, so you can see both the larger ones fell off. So all we gotta do is knock this through. Again, we're gonna reuse this piece right here. This is the where the springs hook for your shoes. And these 2 are all the way through as well. So once we start to get these loose and separate this, it should all just come right off of this backing plate. We're removing this thick piece. We're not going to be reusing that because that's where the billet bracket goes. All right, so we're going to start by knocking these out. I'm trying to do this in a way where it's going to be similar to what people are going to be doing in their home garage, but it's using the socket to hold this off the ground, give the rivet a place to go. Punch, hammer, give it a couple whacks. You can see it's already starting to slide through. There we go. One's out. This is basically what your rivet's gonna look like after you get it out. Real easy. There we go. Now that one's off.
I forgot there's actually 3 rivets on this guy. So we're gonna drill that one out as well. All right, for this 3rd rivet, we actually have to get it from the other side. It's holding on this parking brake spring mount. And we'll start off with a pilot hole. All right, so once you drill this last rivet through here on the spring bracket, you should be able to knock it out. Trickiest part is just gonna be holding it up. Yeah, I can see it's starting to separate in there, so a couple more hits. One more hit. So there you go. Now we have split these 2 pieces. This big thick piece we're not going to be using. This is a billet bracket. It's going to replace this. Now we got the clean heat shield apart, or dust shield, and it's straight. You want to be careful you don't bend the crap out of it. I mean, tweak it a little bit, it's fine. Just make sure when you put it all together it's not rubbing on the rotor anywhere. This part is really rigid, so it's pretty tough to bend that unless you're just getting real crazy with it. So, but then this piece we're gonna reuse. So the next step we gotta do on this guy is grind this little nubbin flat. So you can see the leftover, this rivet is on here. We wanna grind that down so it's flat with this surface. All right, so this is what your spring mount is going to look like once you clean off the rivet off the back. So I hit it with a belt sander. Doesn't need to be this pretty, but you just want to get it flat so when you go and bolt this on to the new bracket, it sits flat like it should. Hey, real quick interruption. If you guys see this SIKKY swag I'm rocking today, we've got a whole bunch of designs up on sikky.com. If you like what you see, go check it out. Hopefully pick one up, represent for us while you're wrenching on your car and you're at the track. Appreciate it. All right, so next step, we've got this modified dust shield that we just removed some of the thicker backing plate off of it. But next step, on the website, when you buy this product, there's access to this template. So there's a template for the left side, the right side. The right side of the car is what we're standing on right now, so we're gonna pick the right side template. You're gonna basically take this and put it on the back side of the dust shield, and you're gonna align these holes. So what I like to do, it makes it a little bit easier. Down here you got this e-brake cable port, and that kind of gets in the way of the template laying flat. So what I typically will do is trim along the bottom of this caliper here, or the cutout I should say, and then come around this so you eliminate that. So when you put it on the back side here and you're lining the holes up, it fits flat, and then what you're left with is your cutout that you need to run on the other side. So pretty straightforward, but figured I'd explain. Let me give you a better angle. So here's the back, here's your template. So this point right here sticks out. It doesn't really lay nice and clean, makes it hard to get out here. But what you're doing is cutting this out, and that gives you a line where you can trace along, and that represents what you need to trim off of this heat shield here that's going to fit around the new Wilwood caliper. So I just take it a little further and take this line in, come around this, and then it makes it lay nice and flat. So you just got to locate your holes. You can even do it by feel. You can hold it up to a light and see through it. However you got to do it. It doesn't need to be rocket science, super tight tolerance, but the cleaner you make this line, the cleaner it fits around the caliper, the better it looks. I'll show you a quick pan of the other side so you get the point. As you can see, we've got a nice clean cut here. It follows the profile of the new caliper, makes it look good, and stays functional. So now we've got 2 calipers. This is on the driver's side. All right, so you can see it's all cut out. Again, made some clearance around here so it lays flat. I just held it up to the light, line these holes all up, and it's not super critical. Worst case, you got to trim out a little bit more as long as you do it cleanly. But you're going to mark this, you're going to follow this edge where it bends up here, and you're going to cut that,
You're gonna cut out that way, and it's real simple once you remove that. So we'll skip to cutting that out and show you what that looks like. All right, not really easy to see, but I ended up just using an awl to scratch it so you can see the line on either side. And you're just gonna take it all the way into this hard edge here that folds up, and you're gonna come all the way around and just knock that off. Same way you come all the way out the end. Show you what it looks like cut. All right, so this is what it looks like cut out. You can see I cut it all the way down to this thick edge right here. So obviously you don't want to cut into this. This is the part where all the emergency brake shoes and pins and stuff hook in, and springs and whatnot. So you're gonna take it down to this thick edge of this inner ring, just remove all this outer. I want to hit it with a little bit of spray paint too, just to keep it from getting rusty, but it's basically what it'll look like. Not really gonna see it once it's on there, so take your time if you want, or just cut and get wild with it, doesn't matter. But as long as you're not rubbing on the caliper, that's all we're concerned with. So now you can see we got the spindle mounted back up, just the reverse of taking it off. I didn't need to cover that, just keep this video shorter. Got your cotter pin back in here. Bolts are all tight, ready to rock. Axle is coming through the spindle here. So next thing we got to do is start putting on the heat shield, the actual wheel bearing itself, and the SIKKY billet bracket. So we're going to do that next. All right, so here we've got the SIKKY bracket. It's about ready to go on. A couple crucial things to mention here on this step you don't want to forget. So as you can see, there's this little nubbin on here. This actually pushes on the back side of the shoe pin that comes through the dust shield. So we want to make sure we put that shoe pin in while we're doing this install, because it's not really accessible afterwards. This little button makes it super easy though when you're putting the clips back on, so it's a great thing to have on there. So either way, this becomes the next process is a sandwich of a bunch of different materials here. So we're gonna show you how to do that next. All right, so I hit this with a rattle can, covered up any of the areas that were bare metal. It's ready to go back together. So obviously the new caliper is going to go to the front side here, but more importantly, this bracket needs to get installed. And like I said, this pin here needs to get put on first. So we're going to take the shoe pin, put it through that hole, and you're going to line your plate up like that. And then you're going to take your spring mount and bolt that on. So using the provided hardware, I'm gonna come through the back side here, and it goes on like that. So you can see it's countersunk hardware, sits nice and flush. So we're gonna do the same thing for this other side. All right, so now we're gonna put this bolt in, and then you're gonna install the provided lock nuts. So at this point, they're just finger tight, but you're going to want to line these holes up pretty square. You know, make sure you're centered out, and the same with the center bore here. Your sheet metal shouldn't be hanging over the billet, and then you're just going to tighten these guys up next. All right, so all I can do is get these snugged up. They're not locked all the way down yet, and that allows me to manipulate the billet bracket in here and the shield to line these holes up perfectly. So again, we're trying to make sure the center bore here is lined up, the sheet metal's not overhanging, and then the bolt holes for the wheel bearings are lined up, and then you're going to use your Allen wrench and wrench to tighten it down. And again, our pin is hanging out in here, ready to go for when we put the shoes on. All right, so now we're going to take our 4 OEM bolts that hold the wheel bearing on, just get them in there, started. And we're going to take our bearing and our heat shield, set that guy on there, and then slide the whole assembly on. Sometimes it takes a little bit of tapping to get it to seat in there, but once the bearing sets in, then you can bring these bolts up in here and start threading them in.
Sometimes it takes a little bit. Make sure your holes are lined up. Once you get them started, then you can hit them from behind to draw everything in. Now it's not going anywhere at least, so we're gonna get the other two started and then I'm gonna tighten them up from behind. All right, there you go. 1/2 inch extension, about 12 inches long. The socket works pretty good. All right, as you can see, we've got this all bolted on. Now we're ready to put the parking brake shoes back on. And just so you reiterate, you can see your parking brake shoe pin is here. If you get to the step where you put it all together and you forgot to put that in there, you're gonna be cussing up a storm, but it makes it real easy when you go to put it together because it can't push back. It's sitting on that button. So we're gonna throw this back together. No need in showing you guys how to do that, but I'll pick up here in a second once this is all back together. All right, you can see all the factory shoe parts are back on. Got the clips and the pins on, springs, everything's ready to go. So next step is going to be putting the rotor back on, and then we can start putting calipers on. All right, get the rotor on here. And we're gonna put the factory caliper on first. All right, factory caliper's tight. Now onto the Wilwood caliper. All right, so now we're gonna take the Wilwood caliper and the provided bolt and lock washer. You're gonna get 2 of them and mount this to the billet bracket. All right, got them finger tight, and now we're gonna snug it up. All right, so we're using a 17 mil wrench. Get these tight. All right, and lastly, don't forget your axle nut, and then this is pretty much done. We just got to put our ABS sensor back in, tighten up the brake line, and you're pretty much done the install. Obviously, we got lined and bleeding the system, but that's more related to your handbrake and how you're gonna set that up. We do make a line kit that makes this super easy, tees and gets you right up to where your handle's gonna be. Keep a lookout for other SIKKY FRS BRZ handbrake specific parts. We got a lot of cool stuff coming, but this will get your handbrake and your rear wheels locking up real nice, real crisp. So that's a wrap for the SIKKY dual caliper bracket kit installation for your FRS or BRZ. To check out more stuff that we make for the FRS or BRZ, make sure you log on to sikky.com or get in touch with one of our knowledgeable sales reps today. Thanks for watching.